Ardell, and as Chair of the Heritage Council, I'd like to welcome everyone to this Grants Program information webinar. I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians throughout Western Australia and their continuing connection to the land, waters, and community. We pay our respects to all members of the Aboriginal communities and their cultures, and to elders both past and present. Well, we're back. On the 30th of November, David Templeman, the Minister for Heritage, announced the opening of the 2021 Heritage Grants Program with a budget of $1 million. The Heritage Council is pleased to return to its regular program of funding to owners of state heritage registered places to the tune of $1 million to promote best practice conservation. In addition, there will be a new community heritage grants program to assist with projects that interpret and unlock the stories behind our cultural heritage places. $200,000 will be made available for grants under this program. Since 1997, the Heritage Council Grants Program has provided 784 heritage projects with over 22 million in funding, and this has assisted owners with the ongoing conservation of places on the State Heritage Register. Places assisted throughout the program have ranged, of course, from the Great Southern Roller Flour Mill with the replacing of the Dingo logo, to lifts in the Atlas building, to homesteads in the far north, and not to mention work on Fremantle Prison. Individual owners can, in addition, apply for a heritage plaque denoting the importance of their property, being one of only 1,370 odd on the State Heritage Register. It is hoped that these places will be further commemorated in a forthcoming publication. Thank you for your interest in the Heritage Grants Program, and we look forward to receiving your applications. I will now hand over to Emily, who will give an overview of the program and discuss examples of past projects that will give you an idea of how your project may fit in and progress. Thank you.
So thank you, John, for the welcome and introduction. So this morning, I will start by giving an overview of the Heritage Grants Program and the two program streams. We will then go through the eligibility requirements and look at some project examples before looking at the program timeline and how to apply. At the end, we will have time for questions, so do please send them through via the chat function. We can't hear you, so please send your questions through that chat function. And please keep in mind that these questions should be general and not project specific. And if you do have any project specific questions, we're more than happy to answer them offline. In terms of the program overview, this is an infographic that gives an overview of the grants program and shows the two program streams. These are two distinct streams for different applicants. So in the blue, we have the State Heritage Grants stream. This is a stream that is essentially the same as the Heritage Council's previous grants programs and provides funding for urgent conservation works to state registered heritage places. Within this stream, we have two types of projects that can be funded. These are physical conservation works projects, such as roof repairs or mitigation of rising damp, and documentation projects, such as the preparation of conservation management planning documents. And I'll run through some examples of these later in the presentation. The State Heritage Grants stream is offered to private owners of state heritage registered places, and local governments, state agencies, and affiliated organisations are not eligible to apply under this stream. Over in the orange, we have the new Heritage Council's grant stream. The Community Heritage Grant stream is available to local governments, non-for-profits, and businesses. The Community Grant stream has two categories, which are community engagement and interpretation. The community engagement category is intended to fund projects that engage with a group or local community and promote conservation or the story of historic places or a place. Projects in this category could be the development of a heritage trail, a heritage trade skills workshop or demonstration, or tours of historic places. The interpretation category provides funding for either the development of interpretation plans or works that follow an existing interpretation plan. And when we talk about heritage interpretation, we're talking about any way that the stories of a place and its cultural heritage significance can be told and promoted. Interpretation is most commonly signage or displays, but can take many forms, particularly with the advance of new technologies such as projections, audiovisual devices, interactive screens, and virtual reality. So in terms of funding, and John mentioned this briefly, there's a maximum of $40,000 available for works projects under the State Heritage Grants category, and $10,000 for documentation projects under the same category. A total of $50,000 per project can be offered when you combine the two different project types under this stream. For example, one application could ask for funding for urgent structural repairs at a maximum of $40,000 and also request $10,000 for the assistance in preparing a conservation management plan. All funding is offered on a matched 50-50 basis, and no in-kind funding is offered under the program. There is an exception for places on the Heritage Council's assessment program that are requesting assistance with preparing conservation management plans where funding of 80/20 is offered. And if this applies to you, please contact us and we can assist with more information. Up to $20,000 can be offered for projects, activities or events in the Community Heritage Grant stream. And this is for both categories within the community stream. In terms of eligibility, the Heritage Grants Program guidelines outline the full eligibility criteria for applications. These are available on the Department of Planning, Lands and Heritage's website, and we would strongly recommend going through these in detail and reading through the guidelines before applying to the program. The State Heritage Grant stream, for successful applicants, you must be a private owner of a State Heritage registered place and have owned the place for 3 or more years. Non-for-profit organisations must provide evidence that they have been declined from Lottery West funding or are not eligible to apply. And if this applies to you and you're unsure, please contact us and we can discuss your project further. Non-government entities, private owners or companies leasing a state registered place from a government agency that have been doing so for 10 or more years may also be eligible to apply. So this applies for past releases. And if you're not sure if this applies to you, please contact us for assistance. Local governments, state agencies, and any government associated bodies are not eligible to apply under the State Heritage Grant stream. The Community Heritage Grant stream, however, is for local governments and non-for-profits and businesses. Applicants to this stream must also provide detail of the estimated income from the project if they're a commercial applicant. They also must disclose all other sources of funding for the project, and if the project involves physical works, they have to give consent from the owners in their application. It's also important to note that in all applicants must have relevant insurance for the project. So in terms of projects, there's additional criteria that needs to be met. In addition to the criteria for applicants, we have a set of project criteria also outlined in the published guidelines, which contains also a list of ineligible projects, which I'll run through in a bit more detail and expand on. As mentioned earlier, there are 2 categories within the State Heritage Grant stream, and projects must fit into one of these 2 categories. So either be physical conservation works projects or projects that document and provide guidance to heritage conservation. For works projects, it must be demonstrated that the works are either urgent stabilisation or repair works, or that they conserve significant fabric. And I'll discuss this a bit more when we get into some project case studies. Projects that are excluded from the funding include the construction of new buildings or additions, any work that has been carried out before the grant offer, or that has or demolition works. General maintenance works and works required under a heritage agreement are also excluded. When we say general maintenance, this would include tasks like gardening or cleaning, and these are excluded from the grants program. For community heritage grants applications, the criteria for either the community engagement or interpretation category must be met, and you must also outline in your application which category you're applying for. For category 1, the community engagement category, one of 3 criteria must be met. So projects don't need to meet all of these criteria, they just need to fit into one. So to the right of the screen, we have these 3 criteria. For the first criteria, the project must celebrate or tell the story of at least one state registered place. So in this way, the project could be the development of a heritage trail that has at least in it one state registered place. Projects could also be the preparation of a heritage study that includes a state registered place. For the second criteria down, provide advice, training or support to custodians of historic heritage places and promote best practice in line with applicable Heritage Council policies and the Borough Charter. This is really for educational talks or events that promote best practice conservation and might involve a heritage architect or archaeologist discussing how to conserve a heritage place. It also may include a demonstrative workshop of traditional building or conservation techniques. For the next criteria down, criteria C, educate the community on the importance, identification and conservation of historic heritage places. So projects that promote conservation best practice more generally or produce educational material that addresses this topic. If your project does fit into one of these categories, it also has to meet additional criteria. And this is to ensure clear community benefit and engagement is achieved and that projects promote best practice conservation. And the full list of these criteria is on page 7 of the guidelines which are published on our website. In the interpretation category, projects must meet one of the 2 criteria and then meet additional criteria as like in the engagement category to ensure they meet the objectives of the program. The 2 base criteria are promote the cultural heritage significance of at least one state registered place or educate the community on the importance, identification and conservation of historic fabric. And it's important to note here that all projects under the interpretation category must either seek funding to compile an interpretation plan or follow an existing interpretation plan. And this is a best practice approach to heritage interpretation and ensures it is well considered and accurately promotes the cultural heritage significance of the place. All projects in the community grant stream should demonstrate collaboration, that be between local governments, non-for-profits, businesses and local community groups or heritage professionals. And this is what the stream is really all about. Products should not replicate an existing service. And when first considering applying, I would use these criteria as a checklist to carefully go through them and to see if your project can fit into one of these categories. If you're unsure if you meet the criteria or if you have a project that hasn't been mentioned, please do call us and we can discuss your project in detail. So that's an overview of the program, funding available and the eligibility criteria. But before I jump into how to apply and run through the application forms, I do have a few examples of past projects funded on the grants program, and we've compiled some examples of possible eligible projects under the new Community Heritage Grants stream. So example 1, Holy Trinity Anglican Church. This was a state heritage grant funded in the last round, and it's a physical works project. So Holy Trinity Anglican Church is a single-storey stone church built in 1895 and is the oldest church in the Pilbara. The 2018-19 grants funding round assisted with a portion of conservation work undertaken at the place following a cyclone in 2013. The funding supported the re-rendering of dilapidated internal walls, the replacement of the mini orb ceiling and the restoration of 14 lead light windows. For the window restoration, this involved the indexing, removal and acid dipping of the lead windows, which restore them to their former glory, which you can see the beautiful image to the right of the restored lead light window. And custom steel cyclone shutters were also fabricated and installed to protect the building from future cyclones. So a second example of a possible project that could be funded under the State Heritage Grant stream is Dingo Flour Mill, which John mentioned earlier in the presentation. And this was a physical works project which saw the recladding of the west facade of the Dingo Flour Mill, and of course included the repainting of the iconic dingo. And because the dingo artwork forms such a part of the place's significance, this was really carefully repainted to match the original. So you can see to the left, there's some corroding happening on the facade, and it was in danger of being lost. So that detail was retained through the assistance of the grants program. So the next project, we have a residential project. So this is 12 Ord Street. It's a residential place within the Ord and Bateman Street state listed precinct, and the precinct includes 18 1 to 2 story residences, construction from 1891 to 1903 in the Federation, bungalow and filigree styles. The precinct is a rare example of an intact group of Federation period residences and contributes to a distinct streetscape. 12 Ord Street was constructed in random coarse limestone, and a cement-based render had been applied over the limestone at a later date, which was causing building damage and trapping moisture within the porous limestone walls. And prior to the grant agreement, the owners of the place were already in the process of removing the render to improve the health of the building. And as this had been undertaken prior to the grant agreement being signed, although it would have been eligible for assistance under the program, it unfortunately could not be funded under the Heritage Grants program. There were, however, additional conservation works that needed to be undertaken that were eligible for funding under the grants program. And these included the repointing of the limestone walls, removal of the concrete veranda, and the reinstatement of the bullnose veranda that had previously been removed. The removal of the later addition concrete veranda and reinstatement of the timber veranda was supported to improve the ventilation further to assist with moisture ingress in the building. The reconstruction of the bullnose veranda improved the place's contribution to the streetscape and legibility of Ord and Bateman Street precinct as a collection of authentic Federation period residences. So that's 3 project examples I've given that were all quite different works, but they are all eligible under the State Heritage Grant stream of the program. There are also very different places. So we had a church, a mill and a residence. A common thread that all these projects share is that the works both improve the condition of the building and conserve and celebrate a unique part of the place. So the LED light windows for Holy Trinity, the Dingo for Dingo Flour Mill, and the bullnose veranda for 12 Ord Street. So for documentation projects, these are some examples of past documentation projects that have been supported under the program. So this is under the documentation category, still under the State Heritage Grants stream. So all heritage places do have really unique or significant elements that are uncovered through the assessment process when places being considered for inclusion on the state register. And these are recorded in a place's statement of significance. The special or significant elements of a place then need to be preserved, and the tools we have to do this are conservation management planning documents. These documents recognise the significance of a place and provide guidance on how they should be preserved and protected and in a practical everyday sense. The preparation of these documents are eligible for funding assistance under the State Heritage Grant stream for private owners to assist with guiding best practice conservation and outlining a maintenance schedule. The most common form of a conservation management document is a conservation management plan, which sets out conservation policies and guides future decisions for a place. The program can also assist with funding for archaeological management plans, for archaeological sites or sites with archaeological potential, landscape management plans, and conservation management strategies. If you're unsure of what your project needs or want to discuss which document would best suit your place, please do contact us, and we also have some more information available on our website. And as discussed in the funding section, State Heritage Grant applicants, so private owners, can apply for both physical works projects and for assistance in preparing conservation management planning documents. And a good example of this would be if you needed to undertake urgent roof repairs, but you also wanted to consider a future plan for the place that set out future works. So that would be a good example of where you could apply for two things. In terms of the community engagement category, we don't have examples of past projects because this is a new stream under the State Heritage Grants Program, but we do have some examples of projects that might be assisted under this stream. To the far left, there is an image from a City of Perth workshop, which demonstrated and celebrated traditional trade skills and was open to the public. And this is a good example of collaboration between the city and professionals, which provided an educational engagement event to the community. So that would be a good example of a project. The top image is a photo of one of the signs in the Pathways to Pinjarra Heritage Trail. And heritage trails can tell the story of a community and promote heritage to its visitors and tourists. The community engagement category can support the research associated with developing a heritage trail and/or the construction of the physical fabric associated with the trail. The category could also potentially support the development of an app or map that communicates the same information as a heritage trail or educates the community about the cultural heritage significance of a place. Moving along to the far right image, we have Heritage Award winner Malcolm Trail talking to a community as a part of the Albany Heritage Walk. A heritage walk or talk could be funded under the engagement category and could be run by a heritage group, business or local government or run collaboratively. The bottom image is a group of contractors atop, I think it's Fremantle Station, because in addition to talks and trails, the engagement category can support hands-on heritage trades workshops and demonstrates, where collaboration can be demonstrated. And these are just examples. There may be a range of other additional projects that could be potentially funded under the community grant stream. As I said, this is a new stream, so we're really looking for creative ideas from people and would like to discuss projects and work with you further. So please do contact us if you have any ideas. For the interpretation category of the community engagement stream, projects can only be funded if they seek to develop an interpretation plan or follow an existing interpretation plan. Interpretation plans are guiding documents which inform the development of interpretation of a heritage place. And this is a best practice approach to interpreting the significance of a place and ensures the story of a place is communicated effectively and meets the needs of the owner of the site. And the Heritage Council has a guide to interpretation on the Department of Planning, Lands and Heritage's website if you'd like more information. The WA Heritage Awards has a category for interpretation projects, and the finalists and winners are also on our website. So they provide some really good examples of very successful interpretation projects. And the most common form of interpretation is signage and displays that communicate the story of a place to visitors, either through providing a story of the site, primary resources, or imagery. There are other forms of interpretation. Drift, an immersive concert presented at the former Albany whaling station, is an example of another form of interpretation. The concert told the story of the last operational whaling station in Western Australia, using the backdrop of the state registered place as a backdrop for that project. And that was one of our Heritage Award finalists. So in terms of heritage professionals, all projects undertaken as a part of the grants program must be guided by a heritage professional with relevant experience to the project. Heritage professionals can be architects, engineers, archaeologists, or other professionals with relevant experience and experience working with heritage places or trades. And there are a set of criteria in the guidelines that professionals must be able to meet. For successful projects, heritage professionals need to be approved by our office and be able to demonstrate they meet the criteria. For works projects, heritage professionals must oversee the work and sign off on works being claimed to ensure they are carried out in accordance with best practice. While we can't suggest professionals to engage, we do have an online database that could assist your search, and this is InContact. InContact is an open database where consultants and professionals can list themselves as providing heritage services. And there is also a drop down that allows you to search for businesses that offer assistance with grant applications. And it's worth noting here that In Contact isn't vetted and businesses aren't endorsed that are necessarily listed. And there may be businesses that aren't listed that might be approved for the Heritage Professionals requirement of the grants program. So this is just a tool to search through. Looking at how to apply, if you haven't already, you should read through the guidelines in full and check through your eligibility carefully. If you're unsure if you or your project meets the criteria, please do contact us and we can help you determine this. The application forms for the program can be found on the grants page of the Department of Planning, Lands and Heritage's website. And there are separate forms for the two program streams, and make sure you complete the form for the correct stream. So read through the form in full, and again, if you have any questions, please do give us a call. Once complete and the attachments have all been compiled, submissions should be made to the HCWA incentives email. And we do offer a pre-submission review where if you submit your application prior to a week before the close date, we can provide feedback before you submit your application. We can also provide assistance when compiling your application. And if you would like to set a one-on-one Zoom, Teams, phone or in-person conversation after the 18th of January, please email us and we can set something up for you. In terms of the application forms themselves, they both start off with a bit of self-eligibility checking on page 1, and page 2 asks for your details, place details and a project summary. The PDF forms are also editable and will expand as you type, so these can be completed fully online and don't require printing. On the Community Heritage Grants form, you will then need to specify which category your project falls under in the description box. So these are the two forms start page, so they do look very similar, so make sure you select the correct form. Both forms then ask for 3 quotes to be provided for the works. And the intent of this is to ensure the grant funding offered reflects value for money and is competitive. It also ensures funding offered is accurate for the project costs. The task descriptions and quotes should provide enough detail for us to assess the works. And if you are unable to get the 3 quotes for the submission due to contractors being busy or the trades you require for the project being limited and very specific, please provide detail of this in your application and contact us if this applies to you. The State Heritage Grants form then requires each task to be described in more detail and the issue, cause, action and solution outlined. If you have engaged a heritage consultant and have any supporting material or condition reports, please do amend these to your application as it will support your application. And there are multiple task sections that can be filled out, but of course, the number of tasks will relate to your project. For example, if a project is only for the replacement of corrugated roof sheeting, you may only have 1 task. So there's multiple pages in the application form, but please only fill out the tasks that you require. And this is an example of what one might look like, which I can provide in PDF, but it just goes through and outlines the issue and the cause and what remedial works are required. There is then a section in the State Heritage Grants form for documentation projects, which similarly asks for quotes. And if you're only applying for the preparation of a conservation management plan, then please flip through this section. And there are a few general project questions at the end, which should be fairly self-explanatory. If you do have any questions when you're filling out the application forms, please do give us a call and we can assist you with that as well. Looking at the timeline, applications open for the grants program on the 30th of November and close at 12 noon on Friday the 12th, February 2021. Applications are then checked for eligibility and assessed for their project merits, and this process takes about 8 weeks, after which recommendations are made to the Heritage Council and successful applications are announced by the Minister. Grant offers are expected to be made around April-May. After receiving a grant offer, you have 28 calendar days to respond. Also at this time, applicants that have not been successful will be notified. After offers are accepted, grant agreements are then agreed to and signed by the Heritage Council and the applicant, and only after the grant agreements are signed can any works progress. Any work done prior to the signing of the agreement cannot be funded under the grants program. Project timelines are agreed to in the heritage agreement, and these must be met in order for funds to be claimed. All projects from both streams must be completed within a year from signing the grant agreement, so approximately by June 2021. And I do have some frequently asked questions here, and I can see some questions have come through in the chat. So did I hear correctly that if an association is a private owner of a state registered place, it is ineligible to apply for physical conservation works? No, that's not correct. If you are a private owner, you are eligible to apply for physical conservation works. If you're a private owner, you can apply for physical conservation works, and you can apply for conservation management documents. So you'd be eligible under the state heritage grant stream. The second question, can you clarify that not-for-profit organisations, i.e. a church, organisations are not able to apply for heritage grants funding for building work such as re-roofing heritage buildings or conservation management plans? Yes, you are eligible to apply. If you own the building and you have owned it for 3 or more years, you can definitely apply under the state heritage grant stream and apply for conservation work such as re-roofing. So you are eligible to apply. I've also had a few questions over the phone. We have an Aboriginal Heritage Grants program open currently at the moment, and that is still open, but it is run separately from the Heritage Council's Heritage Grants program. We've also had a couple of questions about development applications. So if your project is approved under the Heritage Grants program, it doesn't exempt you from any building permits or development applications that are required. So that's a question we've had frequently. If you do have any questions and think of any more following the presentation, please do contact us and I'll be happy to discuss your project with you personally. So sorry, I've had another question come through. Do oral histories meet the criteria? Yes, they do. They would come under the Community Heritage Grants stream, and we're happy to discuss that with you further. We have another question. Can you clarify if works are currently underway, the only works that are eligible are those that are carried out after the start of the grants program? Yes, this is correct. Any works undertaken before you sign a grant agreement cannot be funded retrospectively. And I think that's all the questions that have come through. In terms of the slides being available, we are looking at putting the presentation on our website, so we'll hopefully have that up fairly shortly for you. If you do have any feedback on today's presentation or have any further questions, please contact us. And I have some useful links just up on the screen, but these will again be available in the presentation. Thank you for tuning in this morning.